What kind of person sees a pristine lawn, a patch of green carefully tended like a child, and decides to treat it as their personal racetrack? That's the question that haunted me as I stood on my porch, staring at the muddy tire tracks gouged into my front yard. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I'd spent years turning my modest suburban plot into a sanctuary of order, neatly trimmed grass, vibrant flower beds, a place where I could breathe. But Karen Mitchell, my neighbor and the self-appointed queen of our HOA, had other plans. Her SUV, a gleaming monstrosity, had been cutting corners across my lawn for months, each pass carving deeper scars into the earth. I'd asked her to stop. I'd begged. I'd even left polite notes taped to her windshield. Her response? A smirk and a rev of her engine as she peeled out, leaving another set of tracks. I wasn't just fighting for my lawn anymore. I was fighting for my sanity. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. I'd moved to Willow Creek, a quiet neighborhood with tidy houses and picket fences, seeking a fresh start after a messy divorce. The community was welcoming at first. Block parties, friendly waves, the kind of place where kids rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on. But Karen was different. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was a force, chairing the HOA with an iron grip, her clipboard always at the ready, her eyes scanning for infractions. A mailbox slightly askew? She'd leave a citation. A hedge an inch too tall? Expect a fine. But her own rules? Those were flexible. Her SUV routinely used my lawn as a shortcut to her driveway, saving her the effort of navigating the cul-de-sac's curve. The first time I saw it, I assumed it was a mistake. I knocked on her door, all smiles, and said, "Hey, Karen, looks like you might have missed the road. No big deal, just wanted to mention it." She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound, and said, "Oh, Ethan, it's just grass. It'll grow back." It didn't grow back. Not after the third time, or the fifth, or the 10th. Each morning, I'd wake to fresh ruts, the earth churned like a battlefield. I tried reasoning with her again, this time with less patience. "Karen, you're destroying my property. Please stick to the road." Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned in, her voice dripping with condescension. "Ethan, don't be so dramatic. If you paved your corner like everyone else, this wouldn't be an issue." Pave my corner? I'd spent hours planting clover and wildflowers, creating a haven for bees and butterflies. This wasn't just about grass. It was about respect, about boundaries, about someone thinking they could trample over what mattered to me because they held a gavel at HOA meetings. I started documenting the damage. Photos of tire tracks, time-stamped videos of her SUV veering onto my lawn, even a log of every ignored request I'd made. I presented it all at an HOA meeting, expecting support. Instead, Karen dominated the room, waving off my concerns. "Ethan's new here," she said, her smile venomous. "He doesn't understand how things work. It's just a little wear and tear." The other neighbors shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Nobody wanted to cross Karen. She had dirt on everyone, late dues, unapproved paint colors, whispers of scandal. I left that meeting feeling like I'd been punched in the gut, my evidence dismissed, my voice silenced. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Late one night, staring at the latest set of tracks, an idea sparked. If Karen wouldn't respect my lawn, I'd make it impossible for her to destroy it. I spent hours researching, landing on steel bollards, sleek, sturdy posts that could blend into the landscape but stop a vehicle cold. They weren't cheap, but they were legal, compliant with every HOA rule Karen had ever enforced. I ordered a set, hired a contractor, and watched as they were sunk deep into the ground along the edge of my property. They gleamed in the sunlight, a quiet promise of protection. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest neighbor, Mrs. Ellison, who'd occasionally slipped me sympathetic glances. I wanted Karen to discover them the hard way. The morning it happened, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I heard the crunch. Her SUV lurched onto my lawn as usual, but this time it met resistance. Metal groaned against metal, and Karen's vehicle jolted to a stop. She threw open her door, her face a mask of rage, and stormed toward me. "What the hell is this, Ethan?" she screamed, pointing at the Bollards. I set my mug down, calm as I could manage. "Just protecting my property, Karen. You wouldn't stop, so I did." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might explode. Instead, she spun on her heel, muttering about taking this to the board. I watched her go, my heart pounding, knowing this was only the beginning. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Some thought I'd gone too far. Others, tired of Karen's reign, sent me quiet nods of approval. Mrs. Ellison stopped by with a plate of cookies, her voice low. "Be careful, Ethan. Karen doesn't lose gracefully." I nodded, but inside I was ready. I'd spent too long being trampled, by my ex, by life, by Karen. Those Bollards weren't just steel, they were my line in the sand. And I wasn't backing down. Karen didn't waste time. By the next evening, a notice from HOA was taped to my door, demanding an emergency meeting to address my unauthorized property modifications. I read it twice, my stomach twisting. The Bollards were within regulations. I triple-checked the bylaws, but Karen had a way of bending rules to her will. I called Mrs. Ellison, who'd lived in Willow Creek for decades and knew the HOA's inner workings. "She's rallying her allies," Mrs. Ellison warned, her voice crackling through the phone. "But you've got supporters, too. People are tired of her." I thanked her, but doubt crept in. Could I really take on Karen and her loyalists? The meeting was set for Friday, giving me 3 days to prepare. I dug deeper into the bylaws, cross-referencing every line about property boundaries and modifications. The Bollards were anchored on my land, not the public easement, and their design matched the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. I had photos, receipts, even a contractor's permit. But I knew Karen wouldn't fight fair. She'd twist the narrative, paint me as the aggressor, the outsider who dared defy her. I needed more than facts. I needed the truth about her to come out. That's when I stumbled across something unexpected. While combing through old HOA records in my garage, files Mrs. Ellison had lent me, I found a faded complaint from 5 years ago. A former resident, Mr. Patel, had accused Karen of misusing HOA funds for personal landscaping projects. The complaint was detailed. Invoices for plants and labor that mysteriously matched improvements to Karen's backyard. But the case had been dropped. Mr. Patel had moved away suddenly, and the HOA board, Karen's cronies, had buried it. My pulse quickened. This was leverage, but it was old, and I had no proof it was true. Still, it was a crack in her armor, a hint she wasn't invincible. I decided to talk to Mr. Patel. Tracking him down wasn't easy. He'd left no forwarding address, but a quick search on X turned up a profile that matched his name and age, now living 2 towns over. I sent a message, keeping it vague. "Hi, I'm a Willow Creek resident looking into old HOA issues. Can we talk?" To my surprise, he replied within hours, agreeing to meet at a coffee shop. When I arrived, Mr. Patel was waiting, a wiry man with kind eyes but a guarded posture. "You're stirring up trouble with Karen, aren't you?" he said, stirring his latte. I nodded, laying out my situation. He listened, then sighed. "She drove me out, too. Not just my lawn, my peace. She'd fine me for everything, claim my kids' toys were clutter. When I found out about her skimming HOA funds, she turned the whole board against me. I left to protect my family." He didn't have hard proof either, just memories of invoices he'd seen and a gut feeling. But he gave me a name, Linda Hayes, a former treasurer who'd clashed with Karen and might know more. "Be careful," he warned. "Karen's vindictive. She'll dig into your life, find anything to use against you." I thanked him, my mind racing. This was the twist I hadn't expected, a glimpse into Karen's pattern of bullying not just me, but anyone who challenged her. I felt a surge of resolve, but also fear. What did she dig up on me? My divorce wasn't pretty, and there were debts I'd rather keep buried. But I couldn't stop now. Back home, I reached out to Linda Hayes, who was hesitant but agreed to talk over the phone. "Karen's been untouchable for years," she said, her voice sharp with old anger. "She controls the board, picks the fines, decides who stays or goes." "Those funds?" I saw discrepancies. but when I pushed, she threatened to sue me for slander. I quit the board and kept quiet. Linda didn't have documents either, but she mentioned a storage unit where old HOA records might still be kept. Check the community center, she said. Karen never throws anything away. I spent the next day at the community center, sweet-talking the part-time clerk into letting me browse the storage room. It was a mess. Boxes of moldy files, unlabeled folders, years of neglected paperwork. But buried in a corner, I found a binder labeled HOA Budgets 2018 to 2020. My hand shook as I flipped through it. There they were, invoices for landscaping, addressed to Karen's home, paid with HOA checks. It wasn't ironclad, but it was enough to raise questions. I snapped photos, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about my lawn anymore. It was about exposing Karen for who she was. As the meeting loomed, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. I wasn't just defending my Bollards. I was challenging a tyrant. I printed the invoices, organized my evidence, and rehearsed my speech. But Karen's word from our last confrontation echoed in my mind. You don't know who you're messing with, Ethan. I didn't sleep that night, wondering what she had planned, what she knew about me, and whether I was ready for the storm about to break. The HOA meeting room felt like a courtroom, the air thick with tension as neighbors filled the folding chairs. Karen sat at the head of the table, her clipboard pristine, her smile sharp as a blade. I stood at the back, clutching my folder of evidence, my palms sweaty. The agenda listed my Bollards as the main issue, framed as a violation of community aesthetics. Karen opened with a speech, her voice dripping with false concern. Ethan's actions threaten our neighborhood's harmony, she said, gesturing to a blown-up photo of my Bollards, edited to look garish and out of place. We can't let one person's vendetta disrupt our standards. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others looked skeptical. I caught Mrs. Ellison's eye. She gave me a small, encouraging nod. When it was my turn, I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about property damage. I projected my photos, tire tracks tearing through my lawn, time-stamped videos of Karen's SUV. I asked her to stop. She refused. The Bollards are legal on my property and compliant with every bylaw. I cited the exact sections, watching Karen's face tighten. Then I dropped the twist, the one I'd been holding close. But this isn't just about my lawn. It's about fairness. Years ago, a resident raised concerns about misused HOA funds. Those concerns were ignored. I held up the invoices, my voice rising. These show HOA money paying for Karen's personal landscaping. I think we deserve answers. The room erupted. Neighbors whispered, some shocked, others nodding as if long-buried suspicions were surfacing. Karen slammed her clipboard down, her face red. This is slander. Those documents are fake, she shouted, pointing at me. You're trying to distract from your own violations. But I was ready. I passed out copies of the invoices, letting the numbers speak for themselves. A man in the back, Tom, a quiet retiree, stood up. I remember Patel's complaint. Karen shut it down fast. Maybe Ethan's onto something. Others chimed in, their voices hesitant but growing bolder. Karen's control was slipping, and she knew it. She switched tactics, her voice low and venomous. Ethan's not the sane he pretends to be. Did you know he's behind on his dues? Or that his divorce left him drowning in debt? My stomach dropped. She'd done her homework, digging into my past, just as Mr. Patel had warned. The room grew quiet, eyes on me. I swallowed, forcing myself to meet their gazes. My personal life isn't the issue here, I said. I'm not perfect, but I'm not the one breaking rules or bullying neighbors. I pointed at the invoices again. This is about accountability, not distraction. The meeting spiraled into chaos. Karen demanded a vote to remove my Bollards, but Tom proposed a countermotion, an audit of HOA finances. The room split, half supporting Karen's loyalists, half rallying behind me. Mrs. Ellison spoke up, her voice trembling but firm. I've lived here 30 years. Karen's intimidated too many good people. It's time we looked at the books. The vote for an audit passed by a narrow margin, and Karen's face went pale. As the meeting ended, she stormed out, but not before hissing at me. "This isn't over, Ethan." I left the room shaky but exhilarated. Neighbors patted my shoulder, some whispering thanks, others still wary. Mrs. Ellison pulled me aside. "You started something big," she said. "But Karen's got friends on the board. They'll fight dirty." I nodded, knowing she was right. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying Karen's threat and the crowd's divided faces. I'd exposed her, but at what cost? My divorce, my debts, she'd weaponized them, and I wondered what else she'd unearth. The next morning, I found a new citation on my door, a fine for obstructing public access with my bollards. It was nonsense. The bollards were on my property, but it was Karen's next move. I called the contractor who'd installed them, confirming they were fully permitted. He laughed grimly. "Sounds like Karen. She tried to fine me once for parking my truck too long." I filed an appeal, but the bigger battle was coming. The audit would take weeks, and Karen would use that time to rally her allies, twist the narrative, maybe even fabricate evidence against me. I needed to stay one step ahead, but how? I reached out to Linda Hayes again, asking if she'd testify about the discrepancies she'd seen. She hesitated, fear in her voice. "About kids, Ethan." Karen's vindictive. I didn't push, but her fear fueled my resolve. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was for everyone Karen had silenced. I spent hours online, searching X for mentions of our HOA, finding scattered complaint from former residents, fines, threats, harassment. A pattern was emerging, and I was determined to bring it all to light, no matter what Karen threw at me next. Karen's retaliation came faster than I expected. 2 days after the meeting, I woke to find my mailbox spray-painted with the word troublemaker in red. The vandalism was sloppy, but the message was clear. I reported it to the police, but without witnesses, they could only file a report. Neighbors whispered, some blaming kids, others suspecting Karen, but too scared to say aloud. Mrs. Ellison brought me coffee, her face grim. "She's escalating," she said. "Watch your back." I nodded, but inside I was unraveling. My lawn, my home, my peace, it was all under siege. I doubled down, spending nights combing through the HOA binder and cross-referencing it with public records. The invoices weren't just a one-off. I found a pattern of payments to a landscaping company owned by Karen's cousin, totaling thousands over 3 years. It was damning, but I needed more to make it stick. I contacted the company, posing as a potential client, and learned they'd done special projects for Willow Creek's HOA, projects that only ever seemed to benefit Karen's property. I recorded the call, my hands shaking with adrenaline. This was the proof I needed, but presenting it meant risking everything. Karen wasn't idle. She launched a smear campaign, spreading rumors through the neighborhood's group chat. "Ethan's unstable," she posted. "His divorce proves he can't handle conflict." She even dug up an old speeding ticket, framing it as evidence of my reckless character. Some neighbors bought it, their support wavering. Others, like Tom and Mrs. Ellison, stood by me, but the pressure was mounting. At night, I'd lie awake, wondering if I'd pushed too far. My ex's voice echoed in my head, calling me stubborn, saying I never knew when to quit. Maybe she was right, but quitting now meant letting Karen win. Then came the twist that nearly broke me. A letter arrived from the HOA claiming my bollards violated a newly clarified rule about property obstructions. It demanded their removal within 48 hours or I'd face a $5,000 fine. The rule didn't exist in the bylaws I'd studied, but the letter was signed by the entire board, Karen's allies. I called Mrs. Ellison, who was furious. "They're making it up as they go," she said. "They've done this before to silence people." I filed another appeal, but time was running out. The audit was still weeks away, and Karen was tightening the noose. Desperate, I drove to the storage unit Linda had mentioned, hoping for more evidence. The clerk let me in, and I spent hours digging through dusty boxes. Deep in one, I found a ledger from 2019, handwritten notes detailing special assessments that matched the landscaping payments. The handwriting wasn't Karen's, but it was signed by her, and the former treasurer, Linda. This was it, a direct link. I called Linda, begging her to come forward. "I can't," she whispered. "She'll ruin me." But she agreed to meet, and after hours of pleading, she gave me a USB drive with scanned copies of old checks. "I kept them as insurance," she said. "Use them, but don't mention my name." Armed with the ledger and checks, I prepared for the next HOA meeting, where my appeal would be heard. The night before, I found my car tires slashed. No proof, but Karen's smirk when I saw her the next morning said enough. I replaced the tires, my savings dwindling, and walked into the meeting with my evidence and a fire in my chest. The room was packed, the air electric. Karen opened with a smug speech, calling my Bollards a safety hazard. I countered with the bylaws, the permits, and then the bombshell. I projected the ledger and checks, detailing every cent funneled to Karen's cousin. "This isn't about my Bollards," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "It's about theft, about abuse of power." The room went silent, then exploded. Neighbors demanded answers. Karen tried to shout over them, claiming the documents were forged, but her voice cracked. Tom stood, his voice booming. "We need a full investigation now." The board, cornered, agreed to expedite the audit. Karen's face was ashen as she left, her clipboard forgotten on the table. I'd won this round, but I knew she wouldn't go quietly. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the Bollards, their steel glinting under the moon. They'd held firm, just like I had. But the fight wasn't over, and I braced for what Karen would do next, knowing she'd stop at nothing to destroy me. The neighborhood felt like a powder keg, every glance and whisper charged with anticipation. Karen's smear campaign intensified. She posted on the group chat, accusing me of harassing her with fake evidence. She even filed a complaint with the city, claiming my Bollards blocked emergency access, a lie easily debunked by the fire department's inspection. But the damage was done. Some neighbors stopped waving, their faces clouded with doubt. I felt the isolation creeping in, the weight of being the outsider who dared to challenge the queen. Yet others rallied. Mrs. Ellison organized a petition for a transparent audit, and Tom started knocking on doors, gathering stories of Karen's past bullying. The tide was turning, but slowly. I kept digging, driven by a mix of anger and desperation. The USB drive from Linda was a gold mine. Checks, emails, even a memo where Karen instructed the board to prioritize her landscaping projects. I cross-checked everything, building a case airtight enough to withstand her lies. But Karen was relentless. One evening, I found a lawyer's letter in my mailbox, threatening a defamation lawsuit unless I retracted my false accusations. My heart sank. I couldn't afford a legal battle, not with my debt still looming. I called a friend, a lawyer named Sarah, who reviewed the letter and laughed. "It's a scare tactic," she said. "You got the evidence." She's bluffing. Sarah's confidence bolstered me, but the next blow hit harder. Karen's allies on the board pushed through a new fine, $10,000 for ongoing violations, citing my Bollards and now my disruptive behavior at meetings. It was absurd, but the board's vote was binding unless overturned. I appealed again, but the process was glacial, and my savings were nearly gone. I sat on my porch, staring at the Bollards, wondering if I'd miscalculated. They stood strong, but I was cracking, sleepless, broke, and haunted by Karen's threat. This isn't over. Then came the twist that shifted everything. Mrs. Ellison called me late one night, her voice urgent. "Check the group chat now." I opened it to find an anonymous post, a grainy photo of Karen's SUV parked in a handicap spot at the community center, no permit in sight. The caption read, "Fairness for all?" or "Just for Karen?" Comments flooded in, neighbors sharing their own stories. Fines for minor infractions, threats for questioning her, even a rumor she'd pressured a family to sell their home. The post wasn't mine, but it lit a fire. I messaged Tom, who admitted he'd posted it. "People needed to see her for who she is," he said. "You're not alone anymore." Emboldened, I shared the ledger and checks anonymously on the chat, careful not to mention Linda. The response was electric. Neighbors demanded a special meeting to remove Karen from the board. She fought back, calling it a witch hunt, but her grip was weakening. The audit, now fast-tracked, loomed like a storm cloud. I prepared for the meeting, my evidence polished, my speech rehearsed. But the night before, my front window was smashed, a brick lying among the shards. No note, no proof, but I knew. Karen was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. The special meeting was chaos from the start. Karen tried to take control, but the room was against her. I presented the evidence, calmly, methodically, walking through the checks, the ledger, the landscaping company's ties to her cousin. Neighbors gasped, some shouting questions. Karen's defense was frantic, her voice shrill. This is a setup. Ethan's obsessed. But Tom stood, holding up his phone with a handicapped parking photo. Obsessed with fairness, maybe, he said. Others joined in, sharing stories of her intimidation. Mrs. Ellison's voice cut through. We've let her run this neighborhood like a dictator for too long. The vote to remove Karen was close, but it passed. She stood, trembling, and pointed at me. You'll regret this, she hissed before storming out. The room buzzed with relief, but I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The audit would confirm the fraud, but Karen's threats lingered. That night, I sat among the broken glass of my window, the bollards outside, standing like sentinels. They protected my lawn, but could they protect me from what was coming? I wasn't sure, but for the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. The neighborhood was waking up, and Karen's empire was crumbling. Karen's fall was swift, but not silent. The audit, finalized a week after her removal, confirmed everything. Over $15,000 in HOA funds diverted to her cousin's company, with forged invoices and backdated approvals. The board, now led by Tom, voted to pursue legal action. Karen's name vanished from the group chat. Her SUV no longer roared through the neighborhood. But her absence didn't bring peace. My window was repaired, but the brick incident left me jumpy, checking locks obsessively. Neighbors whispered about her moving away, but I saw her curtains twitch, her SUV still parked in her driveway. She was still here, watching, waiting. I tried to reclaim normalcy, tending my lawn, replanting the damaged patches. Mrs. Ellison helped, bringing seedlings from her garden, her presence a quiet comfort. But the fines against me lingered, unresolved until the board could review them. My savings were gone, eaten by repairs and legal fees to counter Karen's lawsuit threat. Sarah, my lawyer friend, worked pro bono, but I felt the weight of every dollar spent. At night, I'd sit by the bollards, their steel cool under my fingers, wondering if I'd won a battle only to lose the war. Then, a new twist shook me. An email arrived from an unfamiliar address, anonymous but chillingly specific. You think you've won, but I know your secrets. Drop the charges, or everyone knows about Chicago. My blood ran cold. Chicago was where my divorce played out, where I'd made mistakes, nothing criminal, but messy, embarrassing. A defaulted loan, a public argument with my ex, moments I'd buried. How did Karen know? Had she hired someone, or was this a bluff? I forwarded the email to Sarah, who urged me to stay calm. She's grasping, Sarah said. The audit's airtight. She can't hurt you. But I wasn't so sure. I confronted the fear head-on, sharing the email with Tom and Mrs. Ellison. She's trying to scare me into backing off, I said. Tom nodded, his jaw tight. She's done this before. Threatened my brother-in-law when he questioned her years ago. He moved away. Mrs. Ellison squeezed my hand. You've got us now. She's alone. Their support steadied me, but the email gnawed at my sleep. I started recording my walks around the neighborhood, keeping my phone ready in case Karen tried something else. The legal process ground on, slow and costly. The HOA filed a civil suit against Karen, and the police opened an investigation into the vandalism. My mailbox, my window, my tires. No evidence tied her directly, but the pattern was clear. One evening, Tom called with news. Karen had been spotted meeting with a lawyer known for shady tactics. She's not giving up, he said, but neither are we. He'd rallied more neighbors, collecting affidavits from past victims of her intimidation. The community was uniting, but I felt the strain, my nerves frayed from constant vigilance. Then came the final blow to Karen's reign. Linda Hayes, breaking her silence, agreed to testify anonymously, her evidence corroborating the audit. Her courage tipped the scales. The police issued a warrant for Karen's financial records, and rumors swirled she was planning to settle out of court. I should have felt victorious, but I was exhausted, my fight drained by months of tension. One night, alone on my porch, I stared at the Bollards, their steel unyielding. They'd sparked this war, but they'd also held the line. I wondered if I could do the same. The next morning, I found a for sale sign in Karen's yard. Neighbors gathered, whispering, some cheering quietly. Mrs. Ellison hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You did this, Ethan. You gave us our neighborhood back." I smiled, but the victory felt hollow. The email about Chicago still haunted me, a reminder that Karen could strike from afar. I'd won, but at what cost? My lawn was healing, the Bollards standing proud, but I felt battered, my trust in community shaken. I knew I had to rebuild, not just my yard, but my faith in people. The fight was over, but the scars remained, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. Spring came to Willow Creek, and with it, a fragile sense of renewal. Karen's house sold quickly, her SUV vanishing for good. The HOA, under Tom's leadership, slashed the unfair fines against me, and the audit's findings led to a settlement. Karen repaid the stolen funds to avoid jail. The neighborhood buzzed with new energy. Block parties returned, kids played freely, and the group chat filled with plans for a community garden. My lawn healed, the tire tracks gone, replaced by clover and wildflowers swaying in the breeze. The Bollards stood as a quiet reminder, their steel polished by my hands, a symbol of resilience. But healing wasn't instant. The anonymous email about Chicago lingered in my mind, a shadow I couldn't shake. I confided in Mrs. Ellison, who listened over tea, her eyes kind but firm. "You faced her down, Ethan. Whatever she knows, it's just noise now. You're stronger than your past." Her words sank in, slow but steady. I started opening up, sharing beers with Tom, helping neighbors plant their gardens. I even spoke at an HOA meeting, not about Karen, but about unity, about rebuilding trust. The applause caught me off guard, warm and genuine, a sign I wasn't alone anymore. One afternoon, as I weeded my flower beds, a young couple moved into Karen's old house. They waved, introducing themselves, their faces free of the wariness I'd grown used to. "Heard of the guy who stood up to the HOA tyrant," the husband said, grinning. I laughed, a real laugh, the first in months. "Just protecting my lawn," I said, gesturing to the Bollards. They admired them, not as obstacles, but as a story of standing firm. That moment felt like a turning point, a crack of light after a long storm. I began to see Willow Creek differently, not as a battleground, but as a home. My divorce, my debts, the mistakes in Chicago, they were part of me, but they didn't define me. I'd fought for more than grass. I'd fought for a place to belong, for the courage to stand up, for the community that rallied when I needed it most. Mrs. Ellison, Tom, even Linda, they'd carried me as much as I'd carried them. The Bollards, once a desperate act, became a symbol of that shared strength, a reminder that boundaries, when set with conviction, could protect more than just land. One evening, I sat on my porch, the neighborhood alive with laughter from a nearby barbecue. The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold, and I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the kind earned through struggle, through standing tall when everything pushed you to kneel. I thought of Karen, wherever she was, and hoped she'd find her own peace, far from here. But mostly I thought of the future, of new neighbors, new fights, new growth. My lawn was whole again, and so was I, or at least I was getting there. The Bollards gleamed in the fading light, and I smiled, knowing they'd stand as long as I did.